Huzzah, Rangers. This is Phil Harris again here at the Jackson Rangers Show. I've got Dave McVay with me as always, Big Brain Dave, Diamond Dave, Outrider Dave. He is here with us once again. At this point in this preseason, we're going to be talking about our own transactions in the forward positions here with our Free Jacks. And also, we want to discuss who we think will be starting and who will be coming on as substitute bench players, impactful players in those positions. So, Dave, how the hell are you?
Very good. How are you, Phil?
Not too bad. I did get injured here doing dishes. I actually we have a little sink rack above the sink, and I slammed my head into it. So I'm playing hurt today, Coach.
Oh man, we'll get you some ice.
Yeah, I'll try to.
I thought you were gonna say a dish managed to explode. You know how ceramic gets weird sometimes.
Yeah, that was not it, thankfully.
All right. Well.
But I'll just rub some dirt on it. So talk to us about the front row. I know that we had talked about, I think naturally you should have the front row as the transaction discussing that. So tell us what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I do love the front row. I love front row play. I've played at both sides as a prop. Vastly prefer tight head. Yeah, so we're going to look at the positions. First, we'll look at loose head props. Then we'll look at tight head props. And then we're going to look at props that can play both, which is fairly rare. Okay. But we have three props who can play on either side of the scrum. So we're going to look at them kind of as a separate group and talk about what they bring to the front row situation. Okay. So starting at loose head, we have Kyle Sequeira. He's returning. He's a fan favorite. He's 24 years old as of now-ish, so all the ages I'll give will be as of the start of the season. Right. Some of these guys will age up during the season, and the others, age up later in the year. Kyle's 6 foot. He's 260 pounds. 24 years old, like I said. U.S. national. He's from Connecticut. We've had him on the show. He's a great guy. The next is Alex Johnston. He's a newly signed player. That's Joe Johnston's older brother. Mm-hmm. He's 26 years old, 6 foot tall, 245. He's from New Zealand. He's been described in the press releases as uncompromising. That is coach talk for he smashes people. That's what that means. I'm excited about that. He's got a really successful club background. He's a bit of a journeyman. He's played not in the NPC as much as we've seen other players, but rather just a guy who's out there playing really, really high level, successful rugby for the love of playing rugby. Yep. And you love to see that. So I'm excited about Alex. Those are our only two dedicated loose heads, guys who only play loose head.
Interesting.
So tight head. We have a new prop coming in, Herman Agenbach. I hope I said his name right. We can't wait for those matches to start so I can at least be copying what the commentators are saying for everybody's names. Yeah. Herman is 5'11", 265, 21 years old. He is the youngest player in this squad. Wow. He's a tight head player. He's from South Africa. Played in the under-18 South African team. He is from Gray's College, which is one of the boys' schools in South Africa. It is highly competitive. I'll probably make some South Africans mad because it's not their favorite school, but held as the best rugby school in South Africa. It is a big deal that he's a Gray's College guy. He has a reputation for really good work, not just in the set piece, but in the loose, which is always fun to see, especially from tight heads to big boys. Excited to see what he can do at the tight head position. We have Eric de Jager coming back from last year, one of my personal favorite players, 6'2", 260 pounds, 25 years old, South African. Eric has the beef. He has the consistency. He's the Papa Bear of this front row. Really, really thrilled to have him back. Next, Spence Krueger, tight head prop, 6'1", 260, 23 years old, American. He was a men's collegiate All-American. This guy looks like he could crush you with a thought. He has a reputation for being a really hard worker in training, in the lift sessions and things. He's going to continue to develop, only 23, like I said. So he's one of the guys who we're going to see continue to improve year over year, I think. Now we're going to get into the flex positions. So the loose head and the tight head prop, even though they're both props and they're both on the outside of the front row, they have fairly different roles in that the tight head prop stabilizes the scrum and is, all the forces of the scrum go through the tight head prop on either side. Okay. The loose head prop primarily tries to destabilize the tight head prop in order to win the scrum for his team. So the loose head is primarily concerned with the opposing team's tight head and trying to mess him up in a million different ways. The tight, generally by driving up, that's kind of, in the front row, there's a bunch of things that you're not allowed to do that happen literally every single scrum. So you just can't be caught doing them, basically. And one is the loose head driving up. That's kind of the fundamental way you teach a loose head to disrupt the tight head is get your head under the center of his chest and lift him up. The tight head is going to try to drive straight and maybe drive the loose head down, but ideally be bound in tight enough and driving well enough that they can almost just shear them off. And so the tight head is concerned with the entire scrum. And the mechanics are different. The body position, everybody's looking for a biarticular line, like the same kind of general body shape, but where you're contacting the other team is different. So the positions are pretty different. They have fairly different skill sets. It's difficult to play both at a high level.
Just to interrupt for a second, sometimes I would come in and play prop like as an emergency situation. And what you just explained, I've never heard at any point. They just say, get your ass out there and do your best as a 6'4" guy playing prop. I was just like, okay, whatever. So
right.
I appreciate that because no idea. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, people talk and kind of half joke about the scrum being a game within a game, but it really is. It's very complex. Yep. There's a lot going on, and it's one of the things that makes it difficult to referee, and is why we've seen the MLR have that law trial where they're only going to reset it once, and then after that, we're going to penalties or free kicks.
Yep.
So because of that, these roles are a little bit different, and these flex players are a little special. When players can really play both positions well, it really gives you a lot of mutability with your roster. So Quentin Newcomer is primarily a loose head prop, but he can play at tight head and has. He's 6'2", 255 pounds, 25 years old. He's one of our returning players. He improved a lot in 2021, and we saw his time on the field increase over the course of the season. Really excited to have Quentin back. He's a really good ball carrier. Like, he is hungry for contact, and he wins those collisions. So if you like smash 'em rugby, Quentin's your guy. Tavita Sol is 6 foot, 265. He is another loose head flex prop, so primarily a loose head, but can play either position. He's Tongan. He played for the Tongan under-20 team. He then moved, I don't know exactly when, but he moved from Tonga to New Zealand to pursue his career. Now he's moved his rugby career. Now he's moved from New Zealand to the USA to continue to develop his career. He's a Bay of Plenty guy, so a Mike Rogers pick. Yep. And he's a role filler. He's got a reputation for really stepping up, as you kind of can see from a flex prop. Yep. He's a guy who will do what the team asks of him. Another young guy, 22 years old. And then our last flex prop, another 22-year-old, Anthony Adamczyk, one of our draft picks this year, 5'11", 275, making him the biggest prop in our roster. Of course, preseason training, who knows, how these weights are going to change. Yeah. Always a grain of salt in any of the stats that you see reported, just because they're not usually not standardized. Everybody's not jumping on the same scale. But 22 years old, tight head flex prop, American draft pick, as I said. His play time is going to depend primarily on how fast he could rise up to the MLR level, like Krueger and Newcomer. It's really kind of the ball's in his court. The world's his oyster. Pick the metaphor you want. Right. But it's kind of up to him where things go. So those are our 3 flex props, 2 loose head specialists, 1 tight head specialist. That, if you ignore the flex part, that puts us at 4 loose heads, 3 and 4 tight heads. which
Yeah,
is
so
pretty good position to be in.
yeah, 8 props in total. Can you talk a little bit about, with so many props on the roster, how they might use that with substitutions real quick?
Yeah, so you generally, but not always, are going to substitute most of your entire front row during the course of the game. Rugby is kind of, the substitution laws are built such that it kind of assumes you're going to have full access to the whole plate of substitutes. You have to have 3 qualified players who can play the front row, so you have to be able to swap out your entire front row. And the point of that is to make sure that scrums can continue to be contested for the entirety of the match.
Yes.
Back in the day, you couldn't make any substitutions in rugby, even if people got hurt. Then you could make substitutions if people got hurt, but not tactical subs. Well, then everybody just started cheating, right? You just pretend to be hurt and you could be subbed. Yeah. So, unless you're like, oh, no, I'm so tough, I refuse to be subbed to prove how tough I am, you just start faking it. So quickly, we're going to go to tactical subs. Now you can make substitutions, but when a player comes off, they can't go back on. And that's true. There are some special weird rules around that in the front row for if a player gets hurt, so that, again, scrums can continue to be contested, because nobody else on the field can do what those front row players do in the front of that scrum. That's 16 dudes worth of energy slamming together, so it's a really very specialized role. It just wouldn't be safe, exactly. You have to have qualified players in the front row, and that's the word they use in the law book, is qualified players. So once we were making tactical subs, generally the philosophy was like, okay, well, these starters are the starters for a reason, right? They are better than the players who are not the starters. You want to get as many minutes out of your best players as possible. So you'd play them for 70 minutes, maybe 60 minutes, put on the subs in the last 10, 20 minutes when your guys were exhausted. Well, then teams kind of started changing. Okay, well, maybe 10 minutes isn't even really enough chance to get much work out of a guy. You want a little bit more time. Let's look at 60-20, maybe 50-30. Now, recently, not every team by any means, but South Africa in particular has gotten to the point where they have so many highly skilled front row players who are all on such even footing in terms of their athleticism and their ability to execute the game plan, and to do what they need to do. And this extends beyond the front row. It's really the whole pack. They call the group the bomb squad. They replace them kind of en masse. They bring in these extremely experienced senior players halfway through the game, and it's like you got an entire new pack to contend with. Having the depth that we will have at front row, and the props in particular we're talking about, we are going to talk about the hookers in a minute. Having that depth, if you can get all the players clicking and playing, you can really start to do some creative things. The beginning of a rugby match is the most intense physically, athletically. It's the highest paced. It's the most demanding. So South Africa was in one of their matches recently, they changed out their front row before halftime because tactically it was the time to do it. It was when they needed that bomb squad impact.
Wow.
And so I'm not saying that the Free Jacks are going to do that. What I'm saying is this is an area that strategically is developing in real time around us in the rugby world, right? So it's a place to keep an eye on. And if you have the personnel to do that, there really are advantages when you're talking about, it's moving beyond this, our starters are our starters for a reason. The other players are just not as good. If you can solve that problem and say our bench is actually as capable as our starters, we're just picking maybe based a little bit on form, then you can bring in those subs sooner, which lets you, get 40, 45, 35, 45 minutes out of both groups. And they can really maximize your athletic training for that amount of time. You want your training conditions to match conditions, right? So if you're going to be doing that, you have to plan to do it. You have to train these guys to work, not for 70 minutes, but to be prepped to play for 45, 50, in terms of like their energy systems and how you're training them at a strength and conditioning level. So it would be kind of a commitment It's going to be really interesting to see it develop. We do have a lot of depth. There's a lot of guys who can play at a high level. Some of the guys they've brought in, especially Tavita and Harmon, are really, really good players who I think have a lot of upward potential, and young guys. So, they're going to be flexible and they're going to be looking to grow under Mike Rogers as the forwards coach. So really exciting, and I'm personally really curious to see how the front row kind of shakes up this year. Moving into the hookers, the other core element of the front row, of course, they're in the middle between the two props. The props hold up or prop up the hooker, and the hooker hooks the ball back with their foot in the scrum and also throws the ball in at the lineouts. So the hooker is a highly specialized position. You're doing two things that nobody else on the field does. And we have returning Peter Johnston. He's 6 foot tall, 230 pounds, 26 years old. Along with Alex Johnston, he's one of the most senior members of our front row, age-wise. And having two 26-year-olds as the oldest people in your front row is really cool.
Yeah.
Our front row is young and athletic and really going to be able to do some cool stuff out there. Peter's South African. He's a returning player. Like we said, he scored a number of tries. He was really, really invaluable in the 2021 season. In the offseason, he's been playing for the Tel Aviv Heat. He was, as I said, very reliable at hook last year. We also have Canadian Foster Dewitt joining the Free Jacks, 6'1", 235 pounds, 25 years old. There's a lot of hype around Foster. Talking to some of the players, he's a guy that some of the players mentioned as somebody who really has it, and is going to be a little bit of a sleeper addition to the team and might just explode onto the scene. He plays with two of our locks who you're going to talk about on the Canadian national team. And is supposed to be a really consistent line-out thrower, I read. So has a lot going for him. I think we'll see Foster some this year. Our other hooker that we have had signed for a little bit now is Mills Sanarivi. He's 5'11", 250, 22 years old, another young guy. This one's out of New Zealand. He has captained multiple teams. He's won the U19 championship with Taranaki. He can also flex and play in the back row. This guy is fighting his way onto the squad somewhere. His leadership experience, his reputation, the success he's had on the field. There's my bold prediction. I don't know whether he's going to, make a jump for blindside flanker. I don't know if he's going to muscle his way into that hook spot. But I think by the end of the season, we'll probably see Mills pretty reliably on the roster. And then just today, I think maybe yesterday, the Free Jacks announced another player who they had signed.
This is the kid from Boston College, right?
Yeah, Robinson, Connor Robinson. Is that right?
That sounds right.
And he actually doesn't even have a player page on the Free Jacks website yet.
Right.
I believe he's on a development contract,
yes.
But he he's a local guy, played at BC. He's from the greater Boston area. His interview was really cool. He just talked about how excited he is to be, playing for his hometown team. He's been playing for Mystic, as well as BC. And that means really he's like a known quantity for a lot of these guys. A lot of the players were playing for the Mystic in the fall. So not at all an unknown. Is definitely signed to that contract, probably on the recommendation of a number of guys already in the organization. So excited for him. Cool to have him. I'm sure he knows Cam really well, another one of the Mystic guys who's been signed. Cam's moved from a development contract to a full contract, but pretty cool. Always love to see local guys getting on that roster.
Oh yeah, that's so important to have these local guys to root for. The Eagle also local, from Connecticut, I think. Went to high school, I want to say in Rhode Island. So yeah, he's a New England guy as well. So we love to root for those guys, the local boys. Let's talk about my personal favorite position in all of rugby, because I played it as a natural lock, second Roman growing up. So what I wrote down here in terms of transactions, I've got all of the guys that are just newly coming into the team in terms of a profile for them. Obviously, you know, there's names like Josh Larson that is returning to this team, captain, Canadian international, you know, Mr. Free Jacket, as far as I'm concerned, signing number one. So yeah, you know, we know about him. But in terms of the new guys, Mako Winyard, okay. I didn't realize this until I looked into it. He is 18 years old, Dave. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, that's like the dream for us as young men, right? We were like, man, I wish we had an opportunity to play rugby when we first learned about it, right?
Yeah,
So,
for real.
I mean,
To be playing in, you know, an MLR team at 18, that's incredible.
it's unbelievable.
I hadn't even played in my first rugby match at 18 years old, I don't think.
He is a lock from California, 6'6", 265. Now, 6'6", I mean, you know, this is going to be seen over and over again in this locker room. These guys are tall as trees. You know, I'm 6'4", and you know, I'm looking up to these guys. If I saw them in person, which is pretty rare for New England, so we've got some tall trees in this locker group here. Selected in the USA 9-week high performance pathway. Keyword here is potential. I mean, he's 18 years old. He's already at the physical place where you want to be as a lock. He's, you know, 6'6", 265. I mean, maybe you drop a little bit of weight there, but I mean, 6'6" is absolutely perfect for professional rugby. A physical specimen. As I was saying, you know, can you imagine at 18 years old playing on a professional team? I mean, it's awesome. We've also got Stan Vandenhoven, okay? Weird last name, but, you know, stay with me here. 23 years old, lock from the Netherlands, all right? They've got a branding problem there. I need to talk to him about this. So it's Holland, the Netherlands, and I'm missing one. Oh, they call themselves Dutch. But anyway, he's 6'8", 6'8", Dave, 250 pounds. That's
a lot of inches.
It's a lot. It's a lot. He's the tallest guy on the team. He might be right up there as the tallest guy in MLR. You want to talk about a huge line out target? This guy is it, right? Like, it's the dream guy to throw to in a line out because his arms are just so much, you know, longer than anybody else's probably. Former Netherlands under 20s player, which I never thought I would ever say on this show. Okay. Moved to New Zealand in 17 to foster his rugby career. Played 7 games in 19 with Bay of Plenty. So there's kind of a connection there with our coaching staff. Yep. Selected in 21 for the Chiefs development squad in Super Rugby. So this guy has the talent and potential to be selected in Super Rugby. So, I mean, you know, he's 23 years old. He's the tallest guy on the team. That's exactly what you want for a lock. Huge line out target. I saw him in the video that the Free Jacks put out today, taking line out balls. And I was just like, man, you would expect them to throw to this guy constantly because, again, he's huge. And this is going to go back to our roster breakdown. I've got a huge development for you, a huge revelation about that, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. The next lock on my sheet here is Regan O'Gorman. He is a 25-year-old lock from Canada, 6'6". There we are again, 265 pounds. Played in 5 games with Austin last year. Capped 6 times for Canada so far. Moved to New Zealand in 15. Played club level rugby there, and also the New Zealand Heartland Championship in 18 and 19. He's got a little bit of injury history, so hopefully he has a healthy 2022. I was expecting, again, you know, I don't want to get too far into it, but I was expecting him to be the starter along with Josh as the Canadian connection, if you will, at 4 and 5. Mm-hmm. Might be thinking differently now, but we'll get into that here momentarily. The next lock on the list here is Javon Camp Villalovos, okay? 22-year-old. All of these guys are super young, right? I mean, there's nobody close to 30 other than Josh, which I believe he might be 30 at this point. 22-year-old lock from Los Angeles, California, 6'6", 265. It's like we've carved these guys out of a mold or something. Player at the Division 1A football level through 17 to last year. Selected to the 9-week USA Rugby High Performance Pathway. That was in 2021. That is where TK saw this kid. USA Rugby Select, who traveled down to Uruguay in 21. That was with Harry Barlow and a couple of those guys that made that team. Physically, he's there. A lot of potential with a lot of these guys, man. Like that's I feel like that's the theme of the new signings. A lot of potential. There's some veteran presence, obviously, but a lot of these guys are super young and just, can become even better than where they are. So that's very encouraging. So that is the locker room right there. Obviously, it's, 4 and 5. They are the engine room, the boiler room, if you will, of the scrum. Huge in the line out set piece area, being lifted up into the air, tossing the ball to the scrum half. A lot of folks know that already. So let's talk about the flankers. Okay, we've got Slade McDowell, which might be one of the best rugby names in MLR.
It is a really good name.
23 years old, a flanker from New Zealand, 6'6", 220. Okay, selected to New Zealand's under 20s in 18. Otago Boys High School, which I believe, if I was paying attention, that is the high school that TK attended and that Ryan Martin was a teacher and coach at. So there's a connection there. Yep. 5 years with Otago in the Medterton Cup, which they've changed the name of that at this point. 41 games over that period of time. He joined the Highlanders in Super Rugby in 2020 as an injury replacement. So, probably not a day one starter with them, but kind of came in as an injury replacement. Regardless of that, if you're making a Super Rugby squad, you're pretty talented. I don't care what the circumstances are. I wanted to, read this direct quote from assistant coach Mike Rogers because it's pretty good. Slade is a tough, no-nonsense type of loose forward, which is typical of players from Otago in New Zealand. Slade has a real intensity around his collision work, is very strong over the ball and brings real intent to his defensive game. I mean, if that doesn't describe like the perfect flanker, I don't know what does, to be honest.
Yeah, basically that is the definition of what you want.
Yes, sir.
Particularly in a 6 with the way he's talking about the physicality that Slade brings. Intense in his collision work. Is that talk about phrases that mean somebody's getting smashed.
Yeah, somebody's getting
smashed.
Yes, for sure. The final flanker in the flanker room is Cam Davidwicks. We know this guy. He's a local product, 25-year-old from Bradford, Massachusetts, 6'1", 225 pounds. He was a 3-time Massachusetts high school champion, played where our boy Chris Lynn played at Plymouth State University, 2-time All-American, which is nothing to roll your eyes at by any means. He was a Mystic River product and also coming through the Indies. So this is a prime example of a guy that went from Mystic to be selected in the Indies, which is the Independence, the New England Independence, which is like our development squad, and has now been given a full-time contract with the Free Jacks. So this is every rugby player's dream in New England. And Cam is living it right now, exactly. So I just wanted to quote this here from TK. He's a good local man, tough as nails, effective in contact, and surprisingly athletic. He has well and truly earned the opportunity to progress to the next level, and we look forward to seeing his game development further within MLR. So, a lot of potential with these guys.
Now, do you think surprisingly athletic is making fun of the mullet? Is that what that's about?
It could be.
You see the hair and you go, nobody with that hair.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, my God, he did it.
He's a farmer too, I believe is what TK was saying. That's not listed in his bio, but I think he runs a farm.
I love that. So. Farmer strength. There's nothing like farmer strength.
Right, a Massachusetts farmer. Yeah.
There's a long tradition of farming rugby players.
All right, so finally, we've got the 8-man. So as a young man, I would always say, I should play 8, but I was way too slow for that position and just no pace whatsoever. So we've got 2 guys that I've identified that probably, will play 8. They are listed in our bios and stuff like that. It's been written about them as either flankers or just back rowers, but I expect them to play 8 because who the hell else is going to do it is my philosophy on this whole thing. So we've got a 21-year-old by the name of Terrell Pita. So he's listed as a flanker / 8-man from New Zealand, 6'2", 233 pounds. He was the vice captain of the New Zealand Māori in 2018, former New Zealand under 20s, Super Rugby Blues, so Auckland Blues, under 18s and under 20s. And he played 2 matches for Auckland in the Mitre Cup. So, a lot of potential there. Again, if you're somebody that is making their way through the development academy of the Blues, you're a talented rugby player, for sure. 21 years old too, so a lot of potential there to make an impact. Finally, we have our last 8-man here in the 8-man room. This is 28-year-old back rower from New Zealand, 6'4", 245. All right. So he is signed through next year, not just this year, but next year. Jesse Peta Peretti. That's it. Signed with the Chiefs in Super Rugby in 18. Played with the Highlanders in Super Rugby in 20, and also played a little bit in Japan last year. So I know that you're super excited about him coming in. I think he was your, looking forward to new signing.
Yeah, that's right. I think he's going to have a big impact. He's got a lot of experience. He's, got those Super Rugby matches under his belt. He has a reputation for good work in the loose, a lot of physicality, and as I said, bringing the mongrel guy with an edge, and I think it's pretty cool. I also love that we're really getting a strong Maori connection with some of our New Zealand signings.
Yeah,
both
absolutely.
number 8s, I believe, have really strong ties to the Maori community. So I think that's just an excellent piece of cultural exchange anytime you have players coming from New Zealand.
Yeah.
So pretty cool. I know that Jesse made, statements. He used both languages in, some of the press release,
I saw that. That's
so
awesome.
cool stuff. Kenny Hadikiyama did the same thing, where he would talk some in English and then, throw out some Japanese for the Japanese fans.
Very cool.
So yeah, just fun stuff.
Yeah, man. So that is our forwards. Obviously some guys that I didn't mention, but they're retained players. We'll get more into those in just one moment. So overall impressions of the forwards, I feel really good about all these guys that are coming in and all of our retained players. Let's now talk about the difficult discussions here of who is going to be starting.
Yeah.
I'll let you start with the forwards, the front row.
Start with the front row.
Yeah.
So I think it's tough to make any kind of calls like this because we're not in camp. We don't see what's going on. A lot of the new players, never, as you'd say for football, never seen them play a snap. Let alone enough to form a complete picture of where they're at as players. So I figured. I kind of settled tiebreakers by looking for North America qualified players because we know that there's a requirement that you have a certain number of those, and so and we're going to use a lot of our foreign players in the backs. So that said, I think we'll probably see Quentin Newcomer at loosehead, Peter Johnston at hook, and Eric de Jager at tight head. I don't think they're going to see a lot of big shakeup coming out of the gate in the front row. Yeah, there you go.
So we're in agreement on this. The surprise to me was Quentin Newcomer, but we've heard that, from Coach Ryan Martin, that this guy is just really, doing very, very well in practices and holding his own against, international capped guys that he's up against. So it's kind of a surprise, but at the same time, not really, because if you look at the other guys, I mean, who else are you going to put in there other than him at that position? I think the other two it was already a foregone conclusion that they would be starters, but that was the biggest question mark. And I feel like I'm excited for Quentin because he's a young American guy. Yeah, I mean, I think he's earned it too, right?
Yeah, he's definitely put his time in. Like I said earlier, he's gotten better. Over the course of the season, you could tell just watching his play. A guy who's hungry to learn, hungry to improve. So, yeah, I think the edge is probably going to go to Quentin. That said, new coach, new systems. Being here last year is not necessarily a huge indicator. that a player is going to be starting on, day one, match one.
Right.
So we'll see. Maybe Alex Johnston with this experience that he brings as one of the more senior front row players. He could come in, rock in steady as a boulder, and lock it up for that first match. We'll see.
I mean, it could be Herman, right? Because it would be an all South African front row. So, our coach coming in is South African. I'm not saying that he's going to have any bias towards South African players, but it would not be too surprising to see.
It wouldn't be impossible. I believe Herman plays tight head.
Oh, okay. Yep. That's what you're saying.
So that would be Eric de Jager and Spence Krueger and Anthony Adamczyk competing with Herman for that position. I do think tight is probably pretty tight. That said, Eric de Jager put in some long performances, high minutes last season. So I think I can't speak for Eric and have not spoken to him or anything, but I would have to guess as the tight head, you're happy to have some people who can alleviate a little bit of that pressure.
Sure.
Because those scrums will grind you down. I can tell you that.
Oh yeah, especially at this league level, man, for sure. So let's talk about the locker room for a moment here. In terms of starters, obviously Josh Larson is a shoe-in, barring any injury, which knock on wood here, that does not happen.
Mm-hmm.
He is our captain. He is internationally capped for Canada. Wealth of experience in this league. I mean, it's just, there's no way that he is not a part of that conversation as a starter. The question mark becomes who is beside of him.
Mm-hmm.
And, earlier on in this episode, I made a bold claim regarding Mr. O'Gorman here, which was, I probably overthought it. I am one to do that. But now I'm looking at the resumes, the information that we have. A lot of this, what I've put in here is based on resume. What have they done in the past? Doesn't mean what they're going to do in the future. I mean, some of these guys can come in here and just completely turn into a pumpkin. I'm not hoping that for our team, but it's not completely out of the realm of possibility, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Stan Vandenhoven is 6'8", and you cannot teach and you cannot coach height.
That is true.
There's one of Phil's gems right there. I'm going to put that on a t-shirt or something. So, I mean, ultimately, he has a better resume as well than Regan. Even though Regan is capped for Canada, if you look at his Super League history, it's a little bit better. And again, he's a little bit taller and not as heavy. So in terms of a huge line-out target, I'm giving him a slight edge over Regan, which completely throws my graphic out of whack here because I've already made
shooting yourself in the foot, Phil. Creating more work for yourself.
Yeah. I again have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm just kind of flying by my pants here. But I'm putting Stan the man from the Netherlands, the Dutchman. Beside of Josh, what do you think?
I think it's very possible. To me, it comes down to whether Regan or Stan is clicking better with Josh. In that you need your second rows to work as a unit, and in the engine room there, so-called, because as the props work to channel all the forces in the scrum, the second rows are providing a lot of the go forward, the actual drive. The energy that the props are channeling is coming from the second rows. So that means they have to work together as a unit. Regan may have a little bit of an edge there just because he and Josh have been doing that. They have a history. But I think that what you said about Stan as a line-out target and just get his tremendous height is true. And we could see him in there day one. It'll be really interesting. I do think that's one of the big toss-ups in the roster. Some of the positions are pretty clear. I think when we get to open side flanker, probably not going to be a lot of ambiguity. Right. But second lock is one that's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out.
It's a little bit of a question mark. I'm just glad we've got some guys in here to fill with a past, with some history, with a resume. So I don't think it's going to be too difficult for our coaching staff to figure out what they're going to do with that position. So let's move over to the flankers. I mean, open side is pretty, easy to pick. It's Joe Johnston, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there needs to be much to be said. I mean, I know that you picked him as the MVP of this season, the way too early prediction. So it's obvious that he is the man at that position. The slight question mark becomes who plays blindside. I think the answer is going to be Slade McDowell, but Johnson can give him a run for his money, because remember, we were in kind of a tight spot at the beginning of the year in that position because Tara was not here.
Yes.
He was still in South Africa. So a draft pick came in from Life University by the name of Justin Johnson and played well for what seemed like 4 or 5 games. And there wasn't like, oh my God, look at this position. We're messing up here. It's clearly the worst position on the field. That was not the case at all. He did a fine job.
He didn't see an opportunity to work and let it go by him at any point in the season. He really was out there busting his ass.
Yeah, Mr. Waffle House put in the work for sure.
Yeah. Like a line cook at a Waffle House, just absolutely, delivering over and over and over. He wears that Waffle House sleeve if people haven't seen. Yeah. He's been really, really fun. He's also another one of those guys who you look out there and he's got a smile on his face half the time, which for me, I know there's some, old heads who, you should be mad when you're playing rugby. But I mean, I never got through a match without smiling a bunch. It's a good time. I know things are different when it's your job and there's different expectations. But I think players play better when they're having fun. And he's a guy who looks like he's out there having fun while busting his hump. So I think it's possible. Slade is huge and has a really good background. So I think that may be something where it comes down to matchup. Do you need a smash stick, and Slade McDowell, or do you need almost like a second fetcher, somebody who's really going to be scrambling and is going to be popping up all over the pitch just where the other team doesn't want him? Yeah. And, then do you want a Justin Johnson?
It's an interesting,
but yeah, another interesting toss up. It's hard to call
for sure. Regards, with my philosophy of the resume takes precedence, you have to give it to Slade, but at the same time, Justin is a guy that has proven himself, as we've been talking about, to do it at this level in this league. So it's more of a head scratcher than you would think it would be. And obviously, the guys that we're not mentioning, we're expecting them to be coming off of the bench or, development players. And, we've got good depth all over the field. So the good thing is that if Slade, gets it, then we have Justin on the bench to come in if needed,
Yeah. And he can fill at 6 or 7.
Right.
He brings some versatility there.
For sure. And then we got Cam, in the wings there, a local guy that everybody's going to be super excited to see get on that pitch whenever that happens. For sure, he'll be a crowd favorite. But let's move.
We got to get Quincy noisy for the local boys. That's one of my missions this season. I think it's really cool. That's an experience that we can offer those guys, and I think we should do our best to do it.
There's definitely something too when the Eagle comes on to the field. So I want to see him on the substitute bench every single game, because there's going to be a pop. That needed energy when he comes on at, the 60th or 70th minute, whatever the hell it is. There's definitely real proven energy that happens that transfers from the crowd to the players when he comes onto the pitch. It's a real thing. So I expect him to be on the bench every single game. Mm-hmm. So let's discuss the 8 men. So
who I'm picking.
Oh, I know. And I think it's an easy one to pick because, again, with my philosophy here, the resume trumps other things because we're not there seeing what's happening in practices. We're not in the locker room. We can only base it on previous history, basically. So it's Jesse. And it has to be at this point. He's a veteran presence. He's 28 years old. This guy's been around the block with 2 super rugby teams and played in Japan, which is a difficult league that people kind of are sleeping on. But a lot of good players play in Japan that have played in New Zealand and other parts of the world. So Terrell, again, a young man that is going to provide a lot of depth. but it's Jesse's position to lose. And if there happens to be injuries other places, like, God forbid, somewhere in the flanking area, he can fit in there too, as a back rower. And he's a big boy. He's 6'4". So if the lock room it gets depleted through injury, you could throw him in there too, right?
Yeah. And in fact, I was going to say, I do think at some point this season we'll get to see Jesse and Terrell on the pitch at the same time, because we'll have Jesse in the second row.
Yeah.
And that'll free up that 8-man position. So.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that I think it's unlikely that'll be the first match. They didn't draft these locks to not play them, right? But draft sign. You guys know what I mean?
Yes.
They didn't bring all these new guys in to not put some of them on the field.
For sure.
That said, Jesse, one of the things he brings is that versatility where he can play, four different positions. He's got the experience to do it, and that's experience you want on the field. So he's a guy I think they'll be working in at every opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, just think of it like in baseball terms, a utility player is extremely valuable because they can be placed in different positions given the circumstances of any situation. So these guys are extremely valuable. They can go into multiple positions at any point in time. They're as good as gold as far as I'm concerned, and I'm sure TK feels the same way because look at the way the roster is built for the forwards. So we've got guys that can play multiple positions. So, yep, very important. So that brings us to the end of our roster breakdown. We've basically explained who we think is going to be the starters. Again, we don't really know, but this is our best guess, our educated guess, if you will. And I'll be making a graphic, of course, of all this stuff, and we'll throw it on the old social media and see if we can get as many likes as possible with all this stuff.
Awesome.
Basically, us talking is just a way for us to create content with graphics and stuff like that. This is basically what the chat's ready to do.
This is just the premise,
right,
upon which we create not me, create fun graphics with
that's pretty much all we're doing here, and selling merchandise as well. If you see our 2 hats here, you can get these at the Jack's Rangers show /store. So there you go. Any final thoughts, Dave?
Just I love I only wrote down the forward or the front rows in my spreadsheet here, but I think I'm going to write down everybody else's age just to tabulate the average age of this pack, because I think it's low and I love it. Just an opportunity to mention again, really appreciate the strategy in targeting young players who are on the upward trajectory of their careers, riding those guys to their peak. I think it's really cool. I think we're doing it in the forwards, we're doing it in the backs. Look for some of these young guys in their early 20s to really make an impact. And there's one thing they can do that they bring that's advantageous over some of the older superstars that we see, guys we're excited about, that we've talked about, either your Chris Robshaws and your Ma Nonus and stuff, but as fit and athletic and winners of the genetic lottery as those guys are, it's tough to keep up with a 22-year-old flanker. I mean, these guys wake up every morning thinking about the work they're going to do all day and are already drooling about it.
For sure.
So I think it's really cool. Keep an eye on those young bucks because they're going to surprise you.
So, I mean, just looking at the locks, flankers, and 8-man, there's only one guy that's over the age of 25 years old. So,
those guys are out. They're out there to do work, and that's what we saw them do last season. TK's talked about just the grind. Boston expects teams to compete, to be scrappy, to come back from behind. And I mean, my God, 2021, how many times did we see the Free Jacks do exactly that? They never gave up on a single match. They stayed in the fight. And that's one thing that I think youth and having all these guys young and hungry and in competition with each other, to be the guy who gets to roll out on Saturday or Friday or Sunday with our, MLR schedule and get to be uncompromising, get to smash somebody.
Chris Lynn said it over and over again, but it's all very exciting, right? I mean, what we were, hoping for 6 months ago would rapidly approach is just right around the corner. So it's all very awesome. And next episode, we'll be talking about the transactions that have taken place with our backs, and then we'll give the best possible roster breakdown and possible starters for those positions in the next episode as well. So yeah, super excited. It's a great time to be a Free Jack fan. Free Jacks to the moon at this point is how I feel. It feels good to be good, and on paper, I think we are good in the forwards. I feel the same way about the backs. So awesome stuff. And I got one word for everybody. And 3, 2, 1, huzzah!
Huzzah!
Woo!